Right. This review is for The Secrets at the Ocean's Edge by Callie Napier. This was a debut novel for this author. I haven't followed her work since. I imagine she kept publishing. She seemed pretty dedicated to the writing career. I got this book at a author talk at the libraries. I think it was in Ashgrove Library, in around about 2019. I was really keen for this book. I'd had lots of people raving about it. I'd heard good things. It had been nominated, won awards. I was enthusiastic. And I loved the author. I loved her talk. I enjoyed her discussion of how she researched it. It's historical fiction. The research of it, the placing, all the information she had, and her enthusiasm for her topic and her involvement in her characters was wonderful. So I got this book home and I tried to read it. And the take-home message from this book for me was uneasy. It was an uneasy book with uneasy characters. It was picking it up and trying to read it. I felt uneasy, but putting it down and putting it on the shelf where it was sat there unbought but unread, that made me uneasy as well. So there was no ease or true enjoyment about reading this book. I liked it in the sense that the history was great and the writing was very, very polished and accomplished, but I didn't actually enjoy it very much at all. In fact, in terms of enjoyment, it's probably a 0, which is mystifying because it is quite well done. Anyway, so you know those little quizzes that ask you to describe yourself or someone else or something else in one word? The Secrets at the Ocean Edge, uneasy. Now, there's so much about it, like I said, that I was excited. The setting, the history, the research. But actually forcing myself through those first few chapters until I got on a bit of a roll and kept reading, it wasn't fun. The characters in the book are all uneasy. They're uneasy in themselves. They're unhappy with their lot and their lives. They feel cheated or lost or confused, and their uneasiness continually transmitted itself to the reader. Now, there are 4 main characters through which we experience this story. There's Lily, who is the mother. There's Ernie, who is the father. There is Girly, obviously the girl, and Tommy, the uncle. They're very much the this and the that. Tommy was one of the 2 characters that I did actually like and enjoy. He returned from the Great War with PTSD, which after World War I wasn't even really a thing. It wasn't understood. I don't think it was defined yet. So he's having a hard time in life, and he comes to live with them in their new guest house endeavour. They'd previously lived on a farm. They'd had to leave it for money troubles. And Lily and Ernie decide to have a guest house by the sea. When they get there, it's less of a guest house and more of a shack. It's a mess. But Lily wants to be wealthy and influential as a married woman. She's now close to destitute. Ernie also wanted to be successful, rich, and looked up to, and instead he's failed at everything and is bankrupt. Everyone in this book wants things. And mostly the things they want are unreasonable and not nice, and it makes you uneasy reading about how they feel like they're entitled to the world, and it makes them uneasy because they don't get what they feel they're entitled to in the world, and it's just uneasy again. Girlie's wants are fairly modest and most sympathetic. She wants her parents to love her, and they don't. She wants to have friends, and she doesn't. And her uneasiest is the hardest to bear because she's ostracized in her new home because they're poor and they live in a shack, and her parents ignore her almost entirely. So all these layers and layers of uneasy secrets. And the uneasy secrets are where the title comes from. And it's a great title and it's a great cover. Look at that cover. How beautiful is that? I think the cover is one of the reasons why I still have this book. So, even though it's an unenjoyable and uneasy invoking book, it's still a very good book. And that makes me uneasy because here I am criticizing and disliking and dumping on a debut novel that is actually really, really well done. It's been researched, it's beautifully written, it's extensively and very impressively edited and laid out. If anything, I think it might have been over-edited. The author got a lot of assistance from what she said in the talk from a whole heap of different people who helped her with the editing and laying out and gave her suggestions. It might feel just a little bit overworked in terms of editing. But that's not much of a criticism, really. A book that hasn't been edited at all is far more annoying than one that has been over-edited. So, yeah. The descriptive scenes are excellent. The history of the time and the place are so well done and they're engaging to read. I enjoyed reading about the locations. I enjoyed reading about the depressions. I enjoyed reading about the town and the town buildings. I just winced away whenever the characters came back, really. The slow build-up and gradual revealing of the multiple secrets that's the bulk of the plot is intricate and leaves me uneasy. And perhaps it's intentional. Perhaps an uneasy feeling was what she wanted to give us with the book, and if so, it's masterfully done. But if she wanted us to actually enjoy it and like it, and in any way identify with the characters in general, it's not really there. So, back to describing the town. Brilliant. Describing the beach. Excellent. There's small bits that place it in Australia, time and place, that are supremely well done, and one of those is a description of the town women at the CWA, which was an institute in all small town Australian and rural areas. The main townsfolk and their various concerns reveal a huge depth of historical research. Down to the smallest of details, it's convincing. But the people aren't nice. So, beautifully done book, which the whole time I was reading it, I felt like I was teetering on the edge of this void of uneasiness that kept crawling up and creeping up my spine. Because really, all this meticulous detail of time and place and the people and the costumes and everything, why does everyone have to be so unpleasant? All of them are nasty. Every single one. Even in their own way, Girlie and Tommy are nasty. But everyone else, the kids in the village are monsters. The individual people are unpleasant. Ernie and Lily are almost parodies of nastiness. And this was the real core problem for me and the underlying core of all the unease. The characters are all repellent. And there's yet somehow managed to be just two-dimensional at the same time. So while I was reading them, I was constantly left with an uneasy disgust, but I didn't want to read about them and I didn't care about them, but I couldn't believe in them as people either. So I didn't care what their secrets were, and I didn't give a toss as to how they would get out of the nasty little binds that they were constantly weaving themselves into with their secrets and their lies and their pretense. They were nasty. I didn't care if they fell. Not at all. Yes, aside from Girlie and Tommy, as I said. But the other thing about this, you can have a character that's very, very deep, or you can have a character that's shallow, and you can have one that's nice, and you can have one that's nasty. So if you've got a very shallow, two-dimensional character who's still nice, you can enjoy reading them. If you've got a very deep, meaningful character with a lot of detail to it, you shouldn't be able to make that two-dimensional, and somehow this book does. You've got really intricate depths of nastiness in these people, and you end up with something that feels very cardboard cutout. I've got no idea how that happened. Maybe over editing? And the thing is, when we're hearing Lily and Ernie's story, we're mostly looking from the inside of their own head. And as Neil Gaiman in one of his Sandman books pointed out, no one is creepy from inside their own head. They might be a little bit sad, and they might be a little bit bad, and they may not have what they feel they deserve in life, but from the inside of their own head, they are not creepy. Lily and Ernie managed to be creepy and unpleasant from their own viewpoint outward, and still managed to be flat. Oh, bizarre. I truly have no idea if the author meant for Lily and Ernie to be as flatly horrid as they are. If she did, she did a fabulous job, but it isn't fun to read, and she must have realized, I would have thought she'd realize that. Now, so Lily wants to be wealthy and influential in the community, as I said before. Ernie does as well. At least you see why they're together. That's pretty much the only thing that could convince me that these two people would be in any relationship. So they're these islands of uneasy resentment and anger at everything else in the world but themselves, definitely at each other, because the world has not provided them with these desires that they feel entitled to. They're constantly scheming to be seen as what they're not, and reading all this is uneasy because they're superficial, self-absorbed, and oblivious to anything outside their own desires. Lily especially is bewildering. Her disinterest in people is pathological. She actually doesn't really seem to realize that other people are really there. A stereotype of someone trying to achieve status and uneasy. There is an attempt made later in the novel to give a backstory of the context of why pathological levels of selfishness that are exhibited by Lily and Ernie, but I don't remember what it was. It was too far along in the book. If it had been earlier on, we might still have achieved Lily and Ernie as individuals, but it was so far along that you no longer cared about them, and it was maybe a little bit too throwaway to be convincing. And in any case, they're both uneasy and disliked by now. Now, Girly. She was a more sympathetic character, the one that the author most relates to, according to what she said in the talk. Most of the readers too, I expect. She's lonely. She's been moved away from her farmhouse home, her friends, the maid who is closer to her than her mother, and she wafts uneasily and sadly through the story. She wants her parents' love, but her father mostly ignores her, her mother bullies her, and she doesn't understand and cannot deal with the world around her. She doesn't understand her mother's ambitions. She isn't able to enter in the spirit of what her mother wants from her, and she or understand it. It's well written and it's good stuff about a child who's on the cusp of becoming an adult, but it's sad and it's uneasy. Tommy was a great character. So, being mentally maimed from the war, there's a lot of research out there, and the author evidently put in the research. Coming to find refuge with his repugnant sister Lily is sad and uneasy because she doesn't like him and she doesn't do anything for him. He suffers his PTSD as well as the casual brutality of the society which sent him to war and now won't take any responsibility for his experiences. And that, I believe, is a very accurate portrayal of the experience of many World War I vets coming back. It's great writing, but it's not really a topic that can be anything but uneasy, is it? Now, Girly and Tommy are the good bits, the characters I liked, and their stories may be deeply uneasy, but they're engaging and they're interesting. The problem there is that they're not the majority of the plot. We have to read an awful lot of Lily and Ernie and townspeople and bullying children to have a little bit of Girly and Tommy in there as well. In fact, Girly and Tommy and the historical backdrops were my favourite bits, but they don't seem to have been the favourite bits of the author. Lily and Ernie seem to be her favourite bits, which is utterly mystifying. If we'd stuck with the town, the beach, the landscapes, the historical setting, I would have enjoyed this a lot more, but I would have found it easier to relate to the book in general. Not that the town people were any nicer, but at least you weren't having to see them from inside their own heads. Okay, so a few other points that I would like to make of the book, and now we're completely in spoiler territory. If anyone cares about that sort of stuff, just go away. Don't listen if you ever plan to read this book and you don't like spoilers. Now, the crux of the story that brings this whole book to the end of its guest house phase, with Lily and Ernie trying to make a living taking money from people to sleep on the sand, pretty much. It's a sudden ending, and it's mystifying and incompatible with the rest of the novel. Girlie gets shot, and we are subjected to levels of grief and bereavement from Lily and Ernie that are mystifying and completely unbelievable. Because, I mean, you can excuse Lily. She's been building up her self-image in the town as the mother and trying to make Girlie be what she wants her to be. So, because she pretends throughout the novel all the time, maybe some of that the mother is invested in pretending that she's bereaved by Girlie being shot. But Ernie barely seemed to know that she existed for the entirety of the novel, and now we're meant to believe in these depths of misery that he's experiencing because his daughter was shot, whereas for the majority of the book, he doesn't seem to know he has a daughter, let alone ever actually pay attention to her. So I just couldn't. That last bit is like, oh please. That didn't ring true in any way. Now then you get the unravelling of the last of the secrets, and it comes as an anticlimax. So much of a complete anticlimax that I can't remember what it was. And I didn't make any notes of it back in 2019, so I don't know what it was, and I'm not reading it again to find out. The complete anticlimax for me personally was probably based on the fact that I was uninterested and uninvested in any of the characters involved. It might have been more exciting for other readers if you actually were invested in Ernie and Tommy. Now, the other thing is, one of the two characters I like, Tommy, dies. And his death disappointed me significantly. In a way, you could say that in the scenario of the novel, that's probably the most happy ending that could have ever come for that man. But to me, as a writing tactic, it felt a lot as if the author just go, oh well, he's done his part in the novel, let's get rid of him as fast as we can now. It was lame. He was one of the more interesting characters, and he just sort of disappeared. And on the topic of disappearing, how lame is it at the end? Girlie and Ernie just are not there anymore. All we've got is Lily. In the epilogue, that's kind of explained away in some waffly way. But I don't really object to Girlie and Ernie vanishing. I didn't really care about them all that much anyway, but it was randomly incomplete. And then we finish the book with Lily. Or so we're told. But I mean, who is this person pretending to be Lily, was my feeling. Lily, throughout the book, had not one skerrick of grace, joy, happiness, kindness, any form of self-awareness at all. She had nothing, none of that. And then all of a sudden, she's turned into a happy person. Nowhere in the murky depths of the Lily of this book's soul was there any happiness. People don't just change like that from a miserable, uneasy, whining, social climbing, nasty person that I shouldn't say on YouTube, to this glorious, graceful woman. It just doesn't happen. In some ways, it's not a bad ending. If you want a happy ending, this is kind of a happy ending for Lily, at least. It does end on a high note, making the reader feel like it was a good ending. Perhaps the aspect of giving Lily a life with hope and future is good, but it's just not believable in any way, because the Lily that we've seen throughout the book is not this person. And yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is a very good book. I think it's well written, it's well edited, it's exceptionally well researched. I didn't like it. It made me uneasy. I hope other people like it, because it's a good book. It's very sorry, Kelly Napier, you're a great person. I should check out some other books of yours and see if they are uneasy as well, perhaps, one day. Oh, like, comment and subscribe, says the YouTube algorithm.